Bonjour Beffen,
Bonjour.
ça va?
Ah oui, ça va.
Super. So how's your connection going?
Yeah, I I've moved to my mum's work office
Okay,
because the power cut also meant I couldn't charge my laptop.
yeah.
So yeah, that's what we're doing.
So should it be working fine today?
Yeah, yeah, I'm on their Wi-Fi now and I've got chargers everywhere and
Okay,
yeah.
great. Okay, super. Hmm. So again, we'll be waiting a couple minutes for everybody to join and then we'll be able to start. Okay?
Cool. Did your exam go okay?
Well, yeah, it did went pretty fine, I think. That's something I'll have to say because I won't have the results for tomorrow. So just something that we have to see. Bonjour Donna,
Bonjour, ça va?
ça va et toi?
Oui, ça va.
Super, okay.
Merci.
We'll wait a couple minutes for everybody to join, and once most of everyone's here, we'll be able to start. Okay. Bonjour Sabrina,
Ah, bonjour Adriel,
ça va?
ça va bien. Et
Super.
toi?
Très bien, merci. Okay. Bonjour Sandeep,
Bonjour Adriel, ça va?
ça va? Super, et toi? Ça va bien?
Oui, ça va.
Super, okay. Euh, hmm. Ok, bon, on va commencer. We'll start and the others will join us as the class is going on, okay? Um, so I hope that everyone's doing great, okay? Moi, ça va super. As always, I'm going to share my screen to with the presentation of today's class, okay? Donc, jeudi, on a parlé des vacances et des voyages, ok? And it was our last class on this topic. So today we're going to move on another topic. So we'll start a new unité, okay? Which is called Ma vie quotidienne. Does anybody know what that means? Ma vie quotidienne? Any idea, maybe?
Like a daily routine, something.
Oui, ouais, très bien. It's more like daily life, okay? Because vie means life. But it's quotidien means daily, okay? So we're going to talk about, well, the daily life, ma vie quotidienne, okay? Ma is a very important notion here. What does ma means? It's close in English. C'est plutôt proche en anglais. What word in English is really close to ma?
Is it ma?
Me,
So
mine.
it's my, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a possessive adjective, okay? Donc ma vie quotidienne, okay? Et alors aujourd'hui on va parler de la routine. So routine is a word, it may be a French word that was borrowed from French and is in English. So I assume that most of you know what routine means, okay? This is the same thing in English. Bonjour Chiara, ça va? Okay, so as I've said previously, we're going to start a new unity, so we're going to talk about new things, okay? No problem, Chiara, okay? So we're starting a new unity, so we're going to learn more stuff about different things, okay? So for starters, we're going to talk about les moments de la journée. So can anyone try to translate what means les moments de la journée?
Moments in my journey.
It's not really journey, but it's close enough. It's like journée means day.
Adriel, your voice is echoing.
Excuse me?
It's perfect now.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, there was some echo, I assume, yeah. Donc les moments de la journée, so daily moments in your days, okay? So we're going to learn about les prépositions, les articles again. And we're going to talk for the first time about the second group verbs, okay? So this is going to be some new stuff. However, you're going to see that it's pretty similar to what we've seen so far, okay? So here's the table of today's class. We're going to start, as always, with some reviewing about the past classes, okay? So it's going to be very straightforward. Then we're going to move on deeply into what the class is about today, okay? Okay, so for starters, comment ça va, Alma? Est-ce que tu nous entends?
Ça va bien, merci. Et
Super. Ça va super, ok. So, j'ai une question pour vous, alors pour toute la classe. C'est quoi le verbe dans la phrase comment ça va? So what is the verb in the sentence comment ça va?
Is it va?
So it's va, oui. Et alors, quel est l'infinitif de va? So what's the infinitive of va?
Les.
Aller, oui, très bien. So va means, or is the infinitive of aller. So it is kind of counterintuitive of what you have in English, because the translation of aller is basically to go. You wouldn't use the verb to go to ask someone how he feels today, okay? However, it's kind of the same thing as how are you doing, okay? Alma, ça va super. Est-ce que tu peux demander à quelqu'un dans la classe? Could you ask someone else in the class, maybe, Alma? So can you hear us, Alma? Probably not. Okay, so Bethan, est-ce que tu peux demander à quelqu'un dans la classe comment ça va?
Oui, ça va bien. Sandy, comment ça va?
Ça va bien, ça va très bien. Sabrina, ça va bien? Comment ça va?
Très bien.
Ça va bien. Merci.
Ok, est-ce que tu peux demander à Donna, Sabrina?
Comment ça va, Donna?
Oui, ça va très bien. Toi?
Ok, Sabrina, Donna a dit et toi?
Oh, ça va bien, merci.
Super, ok, merci. Ok, so, très bonne réponse pour la question, c'est bien le verbe aller. Ok. Alors, on avance. Pas jusque-là. Alors, la semaine dernière, on a parlé de deux verbes. So we talked about two verbs. We took the example of prendre et mettre. Does everybody remember what those two verbs mean in English? Sort of, or I'll take no answer as a yes. So if you all understand what prendre means in mettre, okay? So we talked about the conjugation of those verbs. Can anyone try to remember to all the class? So what's the conjugation for the first verb, prendre? Anyone willing to give it a go? Maybe.
Just prendre.
Alors, je prends.
Yeah.
Ouais, okay. Alors, for the spelling, it would be this way. After, donc après, qu'est-ce qu'on a? Tu
prends. Yeah.
Alors,
Same spelling.
ensuite, il, elle.
The same, but without the S.
Très bien. Donc, même prononciation, same pronunciation, il, elle, prend. And then, for the next person, avec nous, qu'est-ce que ça donne? Nous. Any idea, maybe? Donna, Sabrina, Alma, Kiara, maybe you can write in the chat if you have a guess.
Then on without the D.
Without the D, yeah. Nous prenons. Okay, so there's the first big difference between, well, the regular verbs, okay, is that most of the times you would find like a sort of root. Here it would be prend, which you can see in the first three versions. However, it changes when you go from the plural. Donc après, on a nous prenons. Ensuite, c'est vous prenez. And then il, elle prennent. Okay? Very simple. You just have to get sort of used to it, okay? Then what do we have? We have le verbe mettre, okay? Donc mettre is easier because it is, well, sort of regular, except the fact that the root is kind of tricky here. We would say je mets. Okay, so same thing is at the end as for the first one. Tu mets, il, elle met. And then you have like the same structure as before. Vous mettez, il, elle met. Okay. So we talked about why we would only use one T here. It's because the double T at the end of words can't be mute, okay? So you can't have like a double T here. It would be impossible because like no words in English ends with a double T, okay? Alright. Donc ensuite, on avait parlé du coup de dans ma valise. Donc on avait parlé d'un petit jeu, okay? So I'm going to ask you a question. J'ai une question pour vous. Donna, est-ce que tu m'entends,
Oui.
Donna? Oui. Tu mets quoi dans ta valise?
Luggage.
Valise, c'est luggage, okay? But what does the question mean here? Tu mets quoi dans ta valise?
And you, what you make what are you carrying in your luggage or something like that?
So in the meaning, it's yes, kind of carrying. However, mettre, we saw that it was the verb to put, okay?
Oh, yes.
So either way, it kind of means to, what are you carrying in luggage?
Oh.
Okay. Donc tu mets quoi
Okay.
dans ta valise, toi?
Are you asking me?
Oui.
Ma valise, I forgot how to say shoes.
Shoes et
Yes.
chaussures.
Chaussures.
Chaussures, oui, très bien.
Chaussures.
Voilà. Donc dans ta valise, tu mets des chaussures, par exemple. Ok? Super. Peut-être Sabrina, tu mets quoi toi dans ta valise?
Mm,
So you have an example above, like with, for example, a t-shirt ou un pantalon.
oh, ok. Yep, t-shirt et un pantalon.
Tu mets un t-shirt et un pantalon? Ok, super. Ça marche. Okay, so we'll be moving on to the other things we talked about. Oh yeah, I didn't specify, but does anybody remember what the group or what is the group of those verbs here? Is it the first, the second, or the third group?
The third group.
Third group, yeah. So also called the irregular group, okay, as we saw with those two verbs. Okay. Et la dernière chose sur laquelle on va parler, c'est les prépositions. Ok. Donc on avait vu que il y avait deux cas majeurs. Ok. So there was two specific cases. With, for example, les villes. C'est quoi les villes? Est-ce que quelqu'un saurait c'est quoi les villes?
Cities.
Cities, okay. So you have example of cities below, okay. Et pour les pays, c'est quoi? Sabrina, tu dois savoir, comme tu parles espagnol. So you should know, Sabrina, since you talk Spanish, since you speak Spanish. C'est quoi les pays, Sabrina?
Well, I'm from Mexico, but I live in Spain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So you speak Spanish. So
yeah.
what is les pays?
Mexique. Oh,
Par
oh,
exemple, ton pays, c'est
okay.
le Mexique, oui. But what does the word pays means?
Country?
Country, yeah. It's the same thing as in Spanish with país.
País.
You see that it's the same spelling here, okay? Ok, donc merci Sabrina. Et les continents, same thing as in English, same spelling, nothing different. So continents. Ok, donc on utilise quelle préposition pour les villes? So, what preposition do we use for cities? So there's a specific preposition that you need to think about when talking about a city. Anybody does have an idea maybe? Are you willing to give it a go?
Is it A with an accent?
C'est A avec un accent, oui. A. Pourquoi A? Alors, on utilise uniquement A avec les villes. So we only use A with, for example, cities. So we have the first example à Paris. L'autre ville, c'est A. So what is the other city next to Paris?
Bordeaux.
Bordeaux, oui, très bien. Et la dernière, un peu plus dur, a little bit harder, c'est Strasbourg, ok? Strasbourg. Donc à Strasbourg. We only use a, okay, for cities. But what preposition do we use for countries and continents? So it's fairly simple. It's all the others, okay? Oh yeah, why do we only use a? Because a is the preposition for something that is very precise. So for example, you would use that preposition, for example, for the time. Let's say, so right now it's like we could say like it's 1 p.m. Okay, so you would use that preposition here because it's for a specific moment in time. Okay, for the others we have au, en, au. Okay. Est-ce que quelqu'un se souvient? So does anybody remember when we use O, when we use en, and when we use O with an X?
Plural, singular.
So
O is AUX is
oui,
plural.
AUX est pluriel, oui, très bien.
And
Pour les autres,
A is feminine, I think.
so which one are you saying is feminine?
A with an accent. No, sorry, masculine.
A with an accent here, we don't use it, okay? So we're specifically talking about O, en, et O with an X. So
Oh.
which one of the, so you said that O with an X is for plural, okay?
Yes.
Très bien. Et pour les deux autres?
EN for masculine.
It's the other way around, yeah.
Okay. So EN is feminine and AU is masculine.
Oui, très bien.
Okay.
So how would you pronounce it then for the en here?
On.
En, oui. Donc on n'entend pas le n. So we don't hear the n sound. We hear a single sound that is specific about the vowel and the consonant together. They make en. And the other is o, okay? Same pronunciation with the two, okay? So a quick question. So we have 4 flags. So what do those countries have in common, according to you? They have something in common, but what is it?
Are you asking me or everybody?
Everybody in the class, if you have a guess,
Oh,
you
okay.
can try to take a gamble, maybe.
They're feminine.
No, they're not all feminine. Anybody willing to give another guess, maybe?
They all speak French?
They all speak French, or partly speak French, yes. Donc, on a la France pour le premier, ok. Ensuite, celui-ci, c'est une idée peut-être? C'est le Sénégal, ok, en Afrique. Ensuite, on a le Canada, et le dernier, c'est l'Algérie, ok. Algeria, Canada, Senegal, etc. So, in order to know what preposition we are using, we should, well, know about the gender or the number of the country. In that case, for the first one here, pour la France, quelle préposition est-ce qu'on utilise? Au, en ou au? Une idée?
En France.
En France, très bien. Alors pourquoi en France? Because la France is feminine. So you would also say, for example, so you would say en France, and you would also say la France. Okay. Ensuite, en bas, alors, alors c'est Canada. Is it masculine or feminine? Une idée peut-être? Hein?
Is it feminine? Canadian?
So Canada is masculine. Et du coup, on dirait. Alors, est-ce qu'on dirait en Canada ou au Canada?
Oh,
Oh, oui, très bien. Au Canada. And the last one, which is a bit tricky here. Alors, pour l'Algérie. So it's en. Okay, because it's also feminine. En Algérie. Okay. Et ensuite, Sénégal, c'est masculin, donc on dirait au Sénégal. Ok? Est-ce que vous avez des questions là-dessus? Pas de questions? Non? Ok. Alors, on avance dernièrement, du coup, sur le verbe aller. So we talked about the verb aller in lengths, okay? So, do you remember what group is the verb aller? So it's a tricky question. Une idée peut-être for what group is the verb aller?
Is it in the first group?
So it would be a well, a good guess. However, it is part of the third group. We talked about it when we talked about, in general, about the third group. We said that this was the group for the irregular verbs. And so according to that definition, aller would be for in the third group and not in the first group, even though it has the common ending of a first group, okay? However, if you look at the conjugation, it is an irregular verb, so it would be part of the third group, okay? But it's a good guess. If you see like the ER, normally it would be a first group, okay? Donc, je vais vous poser une question maintenant. So there are a few examples here. So the first question is, tu vas où en vacances? Alors, et la réponse, je vais en France, à Aix-en-Provence, okay? So, what does the question means here? Ça veut dire quoi? Tu vas où en vacances? So what does this sentence mean?
Is it where do you go on holiday?
Oui, très bien, super. Où is the word where, okay? Donc, très important. Ok. Donc la réponse, je vais en France, à Aix-en-Provence. Donc Bethan, par exemple, toi tu vas où en vacances?
Je vais en France.
En France, ok, super. Dans quelle ville?
Euh,
Alors la ville, donc ici,
à Paris.
à Paris. Super, ok. Super. Donna,
Oui.
tu vas où en vacances?
Um, I
Alors,
didn't understand the question.
so the question, you have a kind of a hint here. Okay. Okay, so you have a hint with the where, okay? So
Yes.
who means where? So
Where do you live?
no, on a le verbe aller. So we have to go. Vacances means vacation, travel. Okay? Donc,
So where will you travel?
très bien, oui. Donc, tu vas où en vacances, toi?
Je vais en Morocco.
Ah, alors, Maroc, c'est masculin.
Ah,
No-
so en Maroc.
Au Maroc, super, très
Oh,
bien.
Maroc. For you, yeah.
Ouais. Faut faire attention du coup. For example, here, Morocco is a masculine country, if you will.
Okay.
You have to use the preposition au. Okay.
Okay.
Does anybody have a question about that for now? Pas de question? Ok. Alors, on avance du coup. Alors, so for Joanna and Bella, so we have started a new theme that is talking about the moments of the day, okay? Journée means day. Donc on va un peu voir, so we're going to see like the key moments during the day. Oh, no problem. Don't worry about that. You can write in the chat if you have a question, if it's too noisy, okay? Just don't worry about it. Ok, alors on commence avec le matin. Donc, c'est quoi le matin? Facile. You have a few images to kind of guess what le matin means, okay? Donc, c'est quoi le matin en anglais?
Morning.
Morning, okay. So here are a few images that could maybe depict what you would do in the morning, okay? Donc, le premier, on a se lever, ok? Et ensuite, on pourra voir les autres activités. So, do you notice something a bit special about how this verb is kind of formed?
It's a reflexive verb.
Alors, vous avez ça en anglais? So, do you have like reflexive verb also in English?
I don't know. I only know them in French. I don't know English one.
Yeah. Donc ça, c'est
Yes, we do have reflexive verbs.
Okay. So, reflexive verbs in French are les verbes réfléchis. So it's basically in the name is like so it's specifically about the action. So in that case, for example, lever, the little pronom réfléchi or reflexive pronoun here indicates how the or who does the action. Okay. So for example, here for je me lève, it would be like the pronoun is giving information about who's doing the information or the action in some case. Yeah. So here are the list of the reflexive pronoun in French. Okay. So I think that you would translate it as in English as, for example, sort of myself, yourself, in some case. I believe so. However, it's a bit tricky here. So we have several reflexive verbs in French, especially for those actions, especially in the morning, okay? So for example, we have another one here that we're going to see a bit later. However, if we look at the conjugation, so does anything change with, for example, lever, with the way you would spell the verb? Does anybody know if it changes? Une idée? Pas d'idée? So basically it doesn't change. It's still a first group verb. So it follows the same pattern of conjugation. Alors, on va essayer ça ensemble. So we're going to try it together. So, what is the conjugation of se lever? Donc c'est je me lève, ok. Ensuite, tu te... Une idée peut-être pour la suite?
Tu te lèves.
Tu te lèves, oui. Et qu'est-ce qu'on rajoute à la fin? So is it the same spelling as, for example, je me lève, or does it change slightly? Sabrina, since you proposed that answer.
It's the same.
It's not the same. No. It's close. We just put
Okay.
however, the pronunciation
Okay.
is the
Yeah.
same. Yeah.
Okay.
And for the rest. So, donc après, Sabrina, t'as une idée? Alors, pour il ou elle, Une idée, Sabrina, peut-être?
Il se lève again.
Ouais, et c'est la même chose que pour la première personne. Ok, donc même chose ici. Same thing. And then it starts to get a bit tricky, but it follows the same pattern. Alors, that you would see in, for example, first group verbs. Ok, nous nous levons, vous vous levez, il, elle se lève. Okay. So you can see that there's a slight change with the accents. Okay. However, the pattern and the conjugation pattern stays the same. Okay. So E, ES, E, ONS, EZ, et ENT. Okay. So it's basically a typical first group verb, aside from, well, the little accents here. Oh yeah, that could be a good reminder. Does everybody remember what that little accent makes as a sound? Alors, quels sont?
Et
Could you try again? So I think I've heard Sabrina.
it's E.
It's not
No.
eh. No,
Ah,
it's close.
okay.
So who was the other person giving an answer?
Me.
Alors Donna, c'était quoi alors?
I was also going to say a.
So it's close to eh. However, it's eh.
Ah.
So we talked about, for example, eh and eh. The difference was the intonation in the way, for example, for this accent, donc l'accent, le E accent grave, it was kind of going down, okay? So you would say eh. And it is in the opposition with this one, which is e, which is rising, just as the accents are showcasing, okay? Alors, du coup, on a, pour le verbe, on a se lever, okay? So if you would use it as in a sentence, for example, if you say I am waking up, you would say je me lève. Okay? Et alors, pour un exemple sur les verbes pronominaux, on a je me lève. Okay. And then we have another pronominal verb, okay, with we have another pronominal verb here with se raser, okay, so this is this action here. So what would be the conjugation here? Is it the same thing as se lever, or does it change? Any idea, maybe? Any idea of how you would conjugate the verb se raser?
Is it the exact same?
It's the exact same. However, we have to identify the root, and that is very simple. You just cross the ER, and it's exactly the same thing. Je me rase, tu te rases, il, elle se rase, etc. It's the same thing. So first groups are kind of your friends since they are very reliable. They don't change much. And you know how they kind of act. Il, elle se rase. basically same conjugation. You just have to identify the root. Okay. So
Can I ask a question? Sorry.
Mhm.
So the translation of both of them, the first one is I wake up, I am waking up.
So, for example, you're using like the present continuous with the be ing, which is saying that you're doing it right now.
Mhm.
However, the present simple in French is kind of a combination with the present continuous and the present simple.
Mhm.
So it can mean I wake up and also I am waking up.
Okay.
So it's you have to keep in mind that the present in French is both like the combination of the present continuous and the present simple.
Okay.
Et donc, se lever, I am waking up, and the other one is I am shaving or I shave, okay? So here, for those of you who may haven't really understood the difference between se raser and raser, so reflexive verbs are kind of the difference in the who is doing and who is like receiving the action, for example, okay? So for example, with se raser, it means that the subject is kind of the actor is also the receiver of the action, okay? So any question about, well, the reflexive verbs?
Only the pronunciation or how you say like je me rase,
Je me rase, oui.
je me
So
rase. Okay.
you have to keep in mind that most of the time, the S, when it is a single S, would pronounce the Z sound. So for
Okay.
example, here it's je me rase.
Rase. Mhm.
Rase, oui. Je me rase, tu te rases, il, elle se rase, nous nous rasons, etc.
Rason, rase, and rason,
Rase.
rase.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Same pronunciation for those four persons. Okay?
Okay.
De rien, Sabrina. Ok. Donc ça, c'est pour le matin. Okay? Alors, so there are a few examples of sentences you could encounter that talks about les habitudes du matin. Alors, habitude, you may understand the meaning of habitude because it's close in English. Tout le monde comprend? Everybody understand what habitude means? C'est bon? Donna, so could you try to make the translation maybe for habitude?
Oh, where is it? Habitude.
Habitude.
Habits?
Habits, yeah.
Mm.
Ok, très bien. Donc, très similaire à l'anglais. Very similar with English. Donc là, on a par exemple 3 exemples de phrases. Okay, so 3 sentences are example of morning habits. Okay, des habitudes du matin. Sandeep, est-ce que tu peux me lire la première phrase?
Alice se lève et boit une tasse de café.
Oh, so how would you pronounce that? E?
Café.
Café, oui. Très
Café.
bien. Café, super. Merci Sandeep. Alors, je fais la deuxième. Donc, Léa fait du sport le matin. Ok. Et alors, la dernière, Alma peut-être, Alex, pour la dernière ici.
Alex regarde son portable.
Son portable, super, ok. Alors, so we don't really care about, well, the meaning of those sentences because you have images to kind of understand the meaning. Et donc, ça nous emmène sur la question, et toi, tu fais quoi le matin? Ok? Donc, on connaît le verbe, so we know the verb here, the verb of action in the sentence. Can somebody try to remind me of what this verb means? Alors, c'est quoi le verbe ici? Le verbe fait.
Is it to do?
To do, yeah. And the infinitive is faire. Okay? Which is a third group verb. Ok. Donc, et toi, tu fais quoi le matin? Bah tiens, ça tombe bien, Bafen. Toi, tu fais quoi le matin? Hmm.
I don't know what it is in French.
Alors, so could you try maybe in English and I'll try to guide you?
Yeah. I walk the dogs.
Okay, so walking the dogs, okay. Alors, walking the dog has multiple translations in French, but the most common would be sortir le chien, okay. Sortir, le verbe sortir, it means like kind of leaving in some ways, for example, or going outside. Okay. Donc tu dirais par exemple, le matin je sors le chien. So it would be an example. Matin je sors le chien. Okay. Hop. Alors un autre volontaire, Bella peut-être? Tu fais quoi le matin?
Oui, je regarde mes emails.
Je regarde mes emails. Super. Okay, so you're very workaholic, I guess. Yeah, très
Pas
bien.
vraiment, non.
Pas vraiment.
J'essaie, mais quand même.
On essaye. Ok. Et toi, Sandip, tu fais quoi le matin?
Dormir.
Ok, alors dormir. Donc, tout le monde comprend le verbe dormir? Mais
To sleep.
to sleep, ok. Merci, Sandip. Donc, comment est-ce que tu dirais si on conjuguait le verbe? So, if we would conjugate the verb, how would you use it in a sentence?
Je dormir.
So, a good kind of way to identify is to identify the root. Here it's a bit tricky since dormir is in the third group since it's irregular. Okay, so the conjugation would be, for example, je dors. Okay, donc tu dors le matin, ça marche? Okay.
So we are removing MIR.
What did you say?
So we are removing MIR to conjugate.
I didn't understand, sorry.
We are removing the last three alphabets. Mir. Okay.
So it's a bit tricky since it's an irregular verb. So it kind of follows the same way of how you would conjugate the verb prendre. So we have the example, je dors. However, if we start with the plural tenses, so for example, nous, you would say nous dormons. Okay, so you see like that for the singular persons, you kind of negate that M. However, when we start with the plural, you would use, or you'd use back the M, which is kind of tricky, and it should remind you of the way you would conjugate the verb prendre, where, as we saw with the verb prendre, that, you know, you're kind of deleting the D and then you'll find it back with certain persons. Okay? So it's, again, really tricky because it's an irregular verb. So just something that you have to get used to. Okay? So does anybody have a question maybe, or is willing to try and tell me what do they do in the morning? Non, c'est bon? Ok, alors super. On avance. Le midi. C'est quoi le midi? Alors, midi a deux significations. Midi has two meanings. Does anybody know what could be the possible meaning of midi?
Afternoon.
It's before afternoon.
Okay.
So, should give you a hint.
Like noon, midday?
Noon. Yeah, it's noon, le midi. So, midi means two things. So it's kind of talks about the time, so noon, not just the hour. And you also have midi, which is the specific time, for example, the 12 midi. So same thing as in English, you would say at noon, and also kind of for the time of the midday lunch, okay? So here we have a couple sentences of examples of what you would do, for example, at noon, donc le midi. Alors, j'ai une question pour vous. C'est quoi les verbes dans la phrase? Donc là, on a trois phrases. Quels sont les verbes ici? Sandeep, tu as une idée pour les verbes dans les trois phrases? Pour la première.
Je mange un sandwich pour mon déjeuner.
Déjeuner, oui, très bien.
Déjeuner.
Et alors, c'est quoi le verbe dans la phrase ici?
Mange.
Mange, oui, très
Oui.
bien. Et c'est quoi l'infinitif du verbe mange? So what's the infinitive of mange?
Manger.
Manger, oui, très bien. Donc, it's a first group verb. Ok, très bien. Quelqu'un d'autre? Alors, je vais prendre au hasard. Donna pour la deuxième phrase.
Oh,
Alors, pour la deuxième phrase, est-ce que tu peux lire pour Cléa?
to can you repeat the question?
So could you try to read the sentence for Cléa? Okay.
Ah, je déjeune au restaurant universitaire.
Je déjeune au restaurant universitaire. Très bien. Et alors, c'est quoi le verbe dans la phrase?
Je déjeune.
So, je is the subject, but it's déjeune. And
Déjeune.
déjeune, yeah. And would you know what's the infinitive of the verb déjeune?
You add an extra E in the end.
It's not an E at the end, it's an R.
X.
So the infinitive is déjeuner with an R
Déjeuner.
at the end, yeah. So it's also same as manger, it's a first group, okay?
So it translates to eating?
So we have, I think, something that is not the same thing as in English, because déjeune is specific for the lunch. So as you may know, in French, the lunch is called déjeuner. So if you are eating, well, the lunch, you would say je déjeune.
Okay, so specifically you use that word for just lunch.
Yeah.
All right.
And some people also use it, for example, with breakfast, because breakfast in French is called petit déjeuner. So
okay.
small lunch.
Okay.
So it's specific for
And for dinner, it's what? Late lunch?
no. So it's a good guess, but it's not this way. And we're going to see how we say about that. Okay?
All right.
It's going to be a little simpler. And I'll do the last one for Marie. Alors, je prends un repas chaud pour mon déjeuner. Quel est le verbe ici? C'est prend. And we saw that it is a third group verb. Okay? So, an irregular verb. Okay? Alors, there are things that are specific about French. I assume that it is the same thing as in English, as English is a much more is a much wider language, as there are many kind of variety in the English. However, in French it's kind of the same thing, but in the inner territory in France, where we have certain regions in France that say a specific thing. For example, like for noon, there are many ways to call it, like the little time during noon. So in French, you can see on this map of France that most of the people would say entre midi et deux. Okay. Some of you that are in France may have encountered or heard about entre midi et deux. Alors, peut-être Alma, Chiara, Donna, Joanna, maybe you have heard about entre midi et deux? No? Not sure?
I haven't heard of it.
You have heard about it? So...
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. Well, that doesn't comfort me in my guess, but it's kind of something that many French people would say about like the time during lunch. So what does that basically means? So we know that midi is the hour, and we know that deux is like a number, so it's two. It's basically between noon and two. Two has an hour, okay? So here you can see a couple other expressions. Sur l'heure du midi, pendant midi, entre midi. Temps de midi, so that's in Belgium and in Luxembourg. We also have entre les midi. So it's fairly common that you encounter some big changes depending on where you are in France. For example, if you go like south, it's very different that you would find, for example, in Paris, since the Parisian French, if you would call that, is very streamlined in some ways. Okay. Donc, a quick question. Same question as before with le matin. Et toi, tu fais quoi pendant midi? So I myself say pendant midi, but you could say entre midi et deux, entre midi, le temps de midi, whatever. It's always very correct, okay? Donc, et toi, Johanna, tu fais quoi pendant midi?
Je, je déjeunais à, à ma maison.
So you would say je déjeune, okay?
Je déjeune à la maison
À la maison,
pendant midi.
pendant midi, super. Ok, très bien. Alors, quelqu'un d'autre? Peut-être Sabrina,
Hmm,
tu fais quoi pendant midi?
euh, je, je vais euh, à, à des cours
So what are you trying to say in English?
that I go to classes and
Mm,
clinics of
ok.
my master. Yeah.
Donc, je vais à mes cours, ok?
Cool. Uh-huh.
À mes cours, ok?
Yeah.
Alors, un ou une dernière, ce sera une dernière. Alma, tu fais quoi pendant midi?
Je corri. I want to say I run.
Alors, the infinitive is courir, but you would say je cours.
Ah oui, je cours.
Ok, donc tu cours, c'est tout, ok? Très bien, super.
And a question, sorry.
Oui, non, pas de souci.
Okay, so the pronunciation between courses or classes and run
Mhm.
is if it's classes is the cour cour
Cours,
cour
oui.
cour and run is
La même chose, the same thing, cours.
the same.
Oui.
Okay.
So I'm going to write on the screen right now multiple words. So here you have 3 words that are pronounced the same way. Cours, cours, cours. The first one could be the verb, for example, running. As you said, this one could be classes, courses, okay? And this one is short. And I also could add another one, which is cours, which is the court. Okay? And those 4 words, which have 4 different meanings, have the exact same pronunciation. Does that kind of answer your question? Or I assume that it doesn't reassure you in the choice of learning French.
Yes, but yeah, it depends like what you are trying to say, maybe.
Oui.
Yeah.
So it really depends on the context. For example, the first one is a verb. So in a sentence, you would found it after a subject. Par exemple, je cours. So with je cours, you know that it's running. Why? Because it's a verb. The other one is a noun. So you would found it or after an article. Par exemple, le cours de français. So you would know that it's this meaning. However, it can also be the same thing here because it's also a noun. However, this one is an adjective. So you would kind of find it after another noun. It really
Okay.
depends on the context and, well, the kind of knowledge of grammar, if you would say like that. Okay? Donc, yeah, it's one of the many tricky parts of French. Okay? Alors, pas de questions? Non, no questions? Okay. Alors, on arrive du coup sur l'après-midi. Okay. So, same structure as you would find it in English. Ça veut dire quoi après? C'est quoi après? So, what does après mean?
After?
After, oui, après. Et midi, même sens. Okay, good. Donc l'après-midi, afternoon. Ok. Alors, j'ai besoin de quelqu'un pour lire le texte. Alors, bah, Donna, est-ce que tu peux me lire la première phrase?
Désolé, can you repeat?
Alors, est-ce que tu pourrais me lire la première phrase? Do you understand the question?
No.
So could you try to read the first sentence?
Oh, je travaille jusqu'à 16 hours.
Jusqu'à 16 heures, oui. 16,
Jusqu'à 16 heures. Oh, jusqu'à 16 heures. Right.
jusqu'à 16
Je...
heures.
Ah, ok.
Très bien.
Do I read the whole thing?
Well, you can continue if you want.
Je rentre
Alors,
à la maison et j'ai mangé le dîner et 18 hours.
à 18. 18 heures.
18, yes, 18 hours.
Okay. Alors, so be careful with the pronunciation of the last E you find here. There's no accents. So you know that it is mute. You can
Mange.
pronounce it. Je rentre, je mange.
Je mange.
It is possible that you find the verbs with, for example, an accent. It is the different tense. Here, in the present tense, it would be mute. So in that case, it's je mange, je rentre. Okay? Same thing with travail. The E is mute. You don't hear the E. Okay? Du coup, so that basically tells us, well, the answer to the first question. Quels sont les verbes dans la phrase? Alors, on a travail, rentre, mange. So the way it's written gives you an hint on what group do they belong in. Here it's the first group. Okay, so how do we know that? Because their infinitive always end with er. Here you can see that most of the verbs that we have seen in those same example sentences are always first group verbs. And because this is the most common group in the French conjugation, so in that case, it is very common to see them, okay? So you have a few more examples of sentences or verbs you could use in a sentence, for example. So I'm going to ask you a question again. Et toi, tu fais quoi l'après-midi? Tiens, Bella, tu fais quoi l'après-midi?
Je travaille.
Tu travailles, ok. Super. Alors, et toi, Bethan, tu fais quoi l'après-midi?
The same du travail.
Bah, super. Okay, so nobody does something different, maybe other than working. Well, we have a...
Travail means, sorry, you were
Oui?
saying something.
No problem. Travail means working.
Oh, okay. I
Um,
thought travail means studying as well.
excuse me, traveling?
No, studying.
Yeah, it can also mean studying in the ways like if you say like je travaille mes cours, so it's kind of I'm studying, I'm working my classes.
Oh, right.
Travail is kind of a wide word to kind of say that you're doing something, working, studying. It's also something, for example, to do construction, for example. In Paris, there are many like constructions being done for the Olympic Games, and you would see that if I translate the sentence in French, it would be il y a beaucoup de travaux. Okay, so the same verb, travaux. Okay. So the noun, for example, for the verb travailler is le travail. Okay. So anybody does have another example for a sentence that they do in the afternoon, or do we have a very, very busy group that works a lot? Any other volunteers?
How could I say I walk in the park?
Alors, walk is marcher. Okay.
Marcher.
So how would you conjugate that for your person?
Je marche dans la parc.
Dans le parc, très bien, oui.
Dans le parc.
Marcher dans le parc. Very similar as the structure we would find in English. Okay. Très bien. Alors, des questions? Any questions on the things we saw so far? Ta question? Okay.
What does, sorry,
Je t'écoute.
the word after travail?
Oh, jusqu'à. Oh, jusqu'à means until.
Okay.
So it's a very very interesting structure here, because we have like the contraction of two words. We have the word jusque and à. Together to kind of easiate or facilitate the pronunciation, you would see in this jusqu'à. So it basically means until, at. So example here, you have a certain point of time, so you would say it's basically means, if we strictly translate it, it would be until at. However, it's in English, if you would like correctly use it, it's just until. Okay. Remember that a is the preposition you would use in French for a specific moment in time. For example, the time of the day. Okay. Alors, on finit donc sur le soir et la nuit. Okay. So, same structure. We have a few sentences here. Alors, le soir, je me douche. Je lis un livre intéressant à 20 h. Je dors à 21 h. Okay. So we have three verbs here. We had verb je me douche. So you can see that it is a reflexive verb, as we have seen at the beginning with the use of the reflexive pronoun. Okay. We have the verb lire and the verb dormir that Sandeep used. Okay. So we have three verbs here that you can use as an example. Donc, tiens, Alma, tu fais quoi toi le soir? So Alma, if you can. Mhm.
Je cuisine.
What do you mean?
I cook.
Ah, je cuisine. Okay,
Cuisine, oui.
cuisine. Très bien. So I'll write it for the group. Je cuisine. The infinitive of cuisine is cuisiner. Okay, très bien. Tu cuisines quoi?
La dinner pour ma famille.
Ah,
I think por ejemplo is Spanish, je ne sais pas. For example, how do I say for example?
par exemple,
Par exemple, la frite,
les,
les
les
frites,
frites, oui.
oui. La salade,
La salade, très
oui.
bien. Super. Et alors, tu cuisines quoi? So what, so in English you would say dinner. In French, it's fairly simple. You would say
Dinner.
dîner.
Mhm.
Je cuisine le dîner. So that answers Donna's question about the how you would say like the meal that you eat in the evening. So it is le dîner. Same thing as in English. And oui.
I just had a question.
Mhm.
The passages before, it had a accent with the word dinner.
Ah oui. Alors ça, it's no big deal. It doesn't change much of the pronunciation. We call it the I accent circonflexe. And it's kind of the legacy of Old French. You don't find much words with an accent circonflexe. However, in that case, it basically does nothing. You would say le dîner. The E is pronounced the same way, le dîner.
There was something like a triangle over the I, so it doesn't
Oui.
change anything.
Doesn't change anything, no.
Oh, all right.
It just, well, in that case, it doesn't change anything. Yeah, for the E. What was I saying before? Yeah, so je cuisine le dîner. So it is the same word as in English. I mean, most English words related to like the cuisine in general is borrowed from French. So I assume that on that kind of vocabulary, I think that you can do pretty fine because like most of the words and vocabulary is already borrowed from French. Ok. Donc toi tu cuisines le dîner, Alma. Tu fais quoi toi, Donna, le soir? Mm. So Donna, did you hear the question?
Yes, but
Mhm.
I also heard somebody's name. So were you asking someone to ask me a question?
Oh no, it was just strictly you. So what are you doing in the evening? Tu fais quoi le soir?
Writing.
Writing. So writing is écrire. So how would you conjugate that in a sentence?
Je fais.
No.
No, no.
Fait is another verb. You would strictly use écrire as the verb of action in the sentence.
Writing. How do you say writing in French?
Writing is écrire.
Oh. J'ai écrit.
J'écris. Très bien.
Yeah.
Okay, super. So le soir, j'écris, for example. You,
Okay,
you
le soir. Ce
yeah.
soir is bonsoir. Okay, bonsoir is evening. Right. So le soir, j'ai l'écrit.
J'écris. Ouais,
J'écris.
super. So you can see here that the J apostrophe is kind of a contraction of je. It's just something that French does for being easier to talk about. Ok, donc j'écris. Super. Et on va finir avec Johanna. Tu fais quoi, toi, Johanna, le soir?
Le soir, je converse avec mes amis.
So you wouldn't really say je converse.
I just didn't know what other verb to
I mean,
use.
it's correct. I mean, it's
Okay.
a French word. You could say je converse. However, it's a very old way of speaking. It's a word that you wouldn't find in most common cases in French. You could say je discute, je parle,
Je parle. Okay.
je papote. However, tu peux dire you can say je converse. It's totally fine. It's just something that you wouldn't commonly see in French. Ok, super. Et du coup, ça nous emmène en fait sur plus ou moins la fin de la séance. So it kind of goes on the last bit of the lesson of today. However, I think that we're going to have to save it for next lesson, this little notion about the second group. I think that we're going to save it for next class, also about the preposition. So I'm going to ask, so each of you, to tell me about their daily routine. So we're going to try to at least make 2 or 3 sentences for some parts of the day, okay? Alors, ça peut être le matin, le midi, l'après-midi, le soir, peu importe, okay? So for those 2 verbs, we're going to keep them for first day. So don't worry about it. So I'm going to basically ask everyone. No problem, Kara. Have a good day. Bonne journée. On se voit jeudi. Okay. So I'm going to ask each and every one of you to kind of tell me about their routine. Make as much sentence as you can. I mean, I don't limit your expression. However, if you have some trouble with the vocabulary, you can ask me, okay? Donc, on va commencer avec toi, Bella. Est-ce que tu peux me parler de ta routine?
Oui, d'accord. Je me réveille le matin vers 7 heures.
7 heures, ok.
Et après, je regarde les emails et je prends le petit déjeuner.
Mhm.
Et je travaille un peu et après, c'est le déjeuner. Donc, je prépare le déjeuner et je mange. Après-midi, je travaille encore. Et le soir, je sors avec des amis ou je fais du sport.
Okay. Well, you set the bar very high, okay? It's very good. I mean, the expression is pretty good and the pronunciation is really neat.
Merci.
Super, bravo Bella. Ok,
Merci.
à toi Sabrina, toi tu fais quoi c'est quoi ta routine dans la journée?
Another one. I mean, no.
So it's hard to go after Bella, but you can try.
Yeah.
Alors,
I can try later.
après? Ok. Alors, on passe ton tour. À toi, Alma, c'est quoi ta routine?
Sorry, I have to leave because I know the class is meant to end at 2:30. So
Yeah,
I'm on a very tight time schedule.
no problem. I mean, if you want to, if you have to go, you can go, no problem with that.
I can do a phrase next time. I'm not trying not to do it. I just have to leave on the dot.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, if you have a tight schedule, you can just write a message in the chat and just leave. It's totally fine.
Okay. Thank you.
De
Sorry.
rien. No
Bye.
problem. Bonne journée.
Bonne journée.
Ok, bah toi, Donna. Alors, Donna, c'est quoi
Oui.
ta routine? If
It's
you want
going
to
to be
try.
horrifying. Les matines, je meditate.
Oh, so it's close. Donc, c'est le matin, je médite.
Les matins, je médite.
Médite. Mhm.
Les midi, je travaille.
Je travaille. Ok, très bien.
Les après-midi, je travaille.
Je travaille aussi. Ok, très bien.
Les soirs, j'ai what was it for writing?
C'est écrire. So, in a sentence, you would say j'écris.
Okay. Les soirs, j'écris.
J'écris. Ok, super. Merci, Donna. Sabrina, you can write in the chat if you want to. On va finir du coup avec Bethan et ensuite Johanna. Bethan, c'est quoi ta routine?
Okay, this is going to be a bit rough.
Oh, don't worry about it. I'm sure it will be great.
So le matin, je suis sortir le chien
Ok, très bien.
et entre midi et deux, je vais de travail jusqu'à 23 heures.
23 heures, ok. So it's very late. C'est
Ouais.
très tard. Mhm.
Le soir, dormir.
Ok, le soir tu dors. Ok, super. Le soir je dors. Ok, great. Et on finit avec toi, Johanna. So, c'est quoi ta routine, Johanna?
Oui, le matin, je me lève à 7 heures
Ok,
et je travaille jusqu'à, is that the way?
jusqu'à, oui,
Jusqu'à déjeuner, jusqu'à
jusqu'au déjeuner.
déjeuner.
Mhm.
Je déjeunais à la maison.
Je déjeune à la maison, super.
L'après-midi, je marche dans le parc.
Mhm,
Et
très-
le soir, je mangeais dîner
Je mange
avec,
le dîner. Ok.
je mangeais dîner avec mon ami.
Ok, super, top. Okay, great. Be careful with the pronunciation or the mute E at the end of that is very common with verbs, for example. Okay, super, bah, très très bien. So Sabrina, if you want,
Yeah, to try.
you
Okay.
can try and we can finish with that.
Okay. Le matin.
So be careful, it's le
Ah.
matin.
Le matin.
Mhm.
Le matin. Je pré- prépare,
Je prépare, très bien,
prépare le petit déjeuner
super.
pour aller en
En cours, oui.
course. À midi, je vais en clinics, practice.
Oh, je vais au tennis.
Uh-huh.
Tu es en train de dire, ouais. Mhm.
Et l'après-midi, je mange et je vais de exercise.
Oh, je fais de l'exercice, ok. Donc, je fais-
L'exercice.
Mhm.
Et le soir, je dîne.
Ok.
Je me repose.
Je me
Ou
repose.
repose. Yeah.
Super. Ok,
Okay.
très bien. C'était très bien. It was pretty good. Okay.
Practice more. Yeah. Thank you.
As always, it's kind of the key with languages in general. Okay, so sorry, it's already pretty late. I think it's something that is very common with me, is that I'm always late. Anyways, if you have any questions regarding today's class, you can always write me an email or ask me now. For the things that we didn't have time to see today with, for example, the finir and partir, we're going to see that so on Thursday. Does anybody have a question before I let you go? Pas de question? Okay. Super. Okay, great. So thank you for coming in again. I'll see you on Thursday. If you have any question for the time being, just write me an email. If you can be there, whatever may be the reason, just write me an email. It will be very nice. Okay. Donc, merci beaucoup d'être venu. Et on se voit jeudi. Passez une bonne journée.
Merci, bonne
Merci,
journée.
Adriel. Bonne
Passez une bonne
journée.
journée. À jeudi.
Merci. Bye bye.
Ouais. Au revoir, au revoir.